Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I want to tell you a story today. Not about overnight success. Not about talent. Not about luck. This is about being ranked 23 out of 23 in sales, dead last, and how a simple 90-day decision to observe instead of react completely changed everything. 3 years ago, I walked into a sales office with confidence I hadn't earned yet. I had watched motivational videos. I had read quotes about closing deals. I believed energy alone could carry me. I thought if I talked fast, smiled wide, and pushed hard enough, I would win. I was wrong. At the end of my first month, the rankings were posted on a whiteboard in the center of the office. 23 names. My eyes scanned from the top, searching for myself. I kept scrolling down the list, expecting to find my name somewhere in the middle at least. I found it at the bottom. Ranked 23 out of 23. Dead last. It felt like someone had put a spotlight on my failure. Conversations felt quieter around me. I imagined people whispering. I imagined my manager questioning why they hired me. Every call I made after that felt heavier. But here's what hurt the most: I was trying harder than ever. I was the first to arrive. I made the most calls. I stayed late. I memorized scripts. I pushed prospects harder than anyone else. Yet my closing rate was the worst in the room. Month 2 came. Rankings went up again. 23 out of 23. Month 3. Same result. That was the moment I realized something brutal. Effort was not the problem. Strategy was. I wasn't bad because I didn't care. I was bad because I didn't understand. And that realization led me to make one of the most important decisions of my career. I stopped trying to be the best closer. I decided to become the best observer. I gave myself 90 days. For the next 90 days, I would talk less and watch more. I stopped arguing with prospects. I stopped forcing scripts. I stopped trying to prove myself in meetings. Instead, I started studying the top performers. The number 1 rep in our office barely spoke in team meetings. He wasn't loud. He didn't brag. He didn't hype himself up. But every month, his name was at the top. So I watched him. I noticed something strange. He didn't rush calls. He asked more questions than anyone else. He paused after prospects spoke. He let silence do the heavy lifting. While I was trying to convince people, he was trying to understand them. There was another rep who consistently ranked in the top 5. She never sounded desperate. Even when a prospect pushed back, her tone stayed calm. I realized I was getting emotionally attached to every deal. When someone hesitated, I panicked. They felt that pressure. She didn't panic. She leaned back. She treated objections like information, not rejection. So I wrote that down. I created a notebook called "What They Do Differently." Every day, I filled it. I wrote down how the top reps opened conversations. I wrote down how they handled price objections. I wrote down how long they paused after asking a question. I wrote down the exact phrases that shifted energy in a call. I didn't copy blindly. I analyzed patterns. Here's what I discovered. The worst performers, including me, were focused on talking. The best performers were focused on listening. The worst performers tried to close quickly. The best performers tried to qualify deeply. The worst performers reacted emotionally. The best performers responded strategically. And here's the hardest truth I learned during those 90 days. I wasn't losing because the market was bad. I wasn't losing because the leads were weak. I was losing because I was trying to control the outcome instead of controlling my process. There's a massive difference. When you chase outcomes, you become anxious. When you master process, outcomes follow. So during those 90 days, I stopped obsessing over the ranking board. I stopped checking it. I stopped comparing myself daily. Instead, I tracked only 3 things. Number 1, how many questions I asked per call. Number 2, how often I interrupted a prospect. Number 3, how calm my tone stayed under pressure. That's it. No revenue tracking. No leaderboard obsession. Just behavior tracking. The first 2 weeks felt uncomfortable. I had to fight the urge to jump in and sell. Silence felt dangerous. Pauses felt awkward. But something strange started happening. Prospects began talking more. They started revealing real problems instead of surface objections. Instead of saying, "It's too expensive," they started saying, "I'm worried it won't solve this specific issue." That difference changed everything. Because you can't solve too expensive. But you can solve a specific fear. Around day 30, I noticed my conversations lasting longer, not because I was pitching longer, but because prospects were engaging more. They felt heard. Around day 45, I closed a deal that I normally would have lost. The prospect said something that stuck with me forever. He said, "You're the first person who actually listened." I didn't celebrate loudly. I just wrote that sentence in my notebook. By day 60, my ranking moved from 23 to 17. Still below average. But no longer last. And the crazy part? I felt calmer than ever. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't chasing validation. I was experimenting. By day 75, I noticed something else. My follow-ups improved. Before, I would send generic messages like, "Just checking in." Now, my follow-ups referenced specific concerns the prospect had mentioned. They were personal. Intentional. Response rates increased. By day 90, the ranking board went up again. I walked toward it with less fear this time. I scanned from the top. And there it was. Number 6. From 23 out of 23, to top 6 in 90 days. No new script. No new product. No new leads. Just observation. But here's where the story gets deeper. The ranking wasn't the real transformation. The real transformation was internal. During those 90 days, I stopped seeing myself as a failure. I started seeing myself as a student. And that shift removed ego from the equation. Ego is dangerous in performance-driven environments. It makes you defend bad habits. It makes you blame external factors. It makes you resist learning. When I was ranked last, my ego was screaming, "This system is unfair. The leads are weak. The manager doesn't like me." But observation forced humility. It forced me to admit that if someone else could win in the same room with the same product, then the gap was skill, not circumstance. That realization gave me power. Because if the problem is skill, skill can be built. If the problem is strategy, strategy can be adjusted. If the problem is mindset, mindset can be trained. Over the next 6 months, I kept observing. Even after climbing into the top 5 consistently, I didn't stop studying. I realized something powerful. Every level has a different pattern. The top 10 reps had certain behaviors. The top 5 had refined versions of those behaviors. The number 1 rep had a completely different level of emotional control. He never celebrated too high. He never crashed too low. He operated steady. Consistent. And I realized consistency is a competitive advantage. Not intensity. Not motivation. Consistency. When you're ranked 23 out of 23, motivation burns fast. It spikes when you're angry, then disappears when results don't change. Consistency doesn't rely on emotion. It relies on systems. The 90-day observation became a system. Even outside of sales, I started applying it everywhere. In communication. In fitness. In learning. Instead of asking, why am I failing? I started asking, what are the top performers doing repeatedly? That question changed my life. Because success leaves patterns. And patterns can be studied. You don't need to be the loudest in the room. You need to be the most aware. There's something powerful about silence when you're learning. When you stop defending yourself, you can actually see your blind spots. During those early months, I discovered habits I didn't even know I had. I used filler words when nervous. I sped up my speech when unsure. I over-explained when challenged. Those small behaviors signaled insecurity to prospects. Once I became aware of them, I could control them. Awareness precedes improvement. And that might be the biggest lesson of this story. Most people try to improve without first observing. They add tactics without removing weaknesses. They chase motivation instead of diagnosing patterns. But the truth is uncomfortable. If you're ranked last in your environment, the fastest way up isn't ego-driven action. It's patient observation. It's slowing down enough to study the game before trying to win it. And here's something else I learned. The ranking board was never my enemy. It was feedback. Feedback feels like judgment when your identity is attached to performance. But when your identity shifts to growth, feedback becomes data. Data is neutral. And neutral information is powerful. That 90-day period built something deeper than sales skill. It built resilience. Because once you survive being last, you stop fearing temporary failure. You realize being at the bottom is not a permanent label. It's a starting point. I've since worked with teams where new hires feel embarrassed about being last. I tell them the same thing I wish someone told me. Don't rush to prove yourself. Rush to understand. Because proving yourself is emotional. Understanding the system is strategic. When I stopped trying to look capable and started trying to become capable, everything shifted. And here's the most ironic part. The less obsessed I became with ranking, the higher I climbed. When you detach from validation, your energy changes. You stop selling to impress. You start selling to serve. Prospects feel that difference instantly. Energy is subtle but powerful. Desperation repels. Confidence attracts. But confidence isn't loud. It's calm. That calmness came from preparation and observation. It came from knowing I had studied the patterns. It came from understanding that even if I lost a deal, I would extract a lesson. Loss stopped feeling personal. It became research. And when you treat every failure as research, you accelerate growth. If you're watching this right now and you feel like you're ranked 23 out of 23 in some area of your life, I want you to hear this clearly. Being last is not a verdict. It's visibility. It shows you exactly where you stand. And that clarity is a gift. Because once you see the gap, you can close it. But only if you're willing to observe without ego. Give yourself 90 days. Not 90 days of random hustle. 90 days of intentional awareness. Watch the best in your environment. Study their behaviors, not just their results. Track your habits, not just your outcomes. Detach from daily validation. Focus on process metrics you control. And most importantly, stay consistent even when external proof is slow. Transformation is rarely dramatic in the moment. It's subtle. Quiet. Incremental. You don't feel the shift daily. You feel it when you look back. When I look back at being ranked 23 out of 23, I don't feel embarrassment anymore. I feel gratitude. Because that moment forced me to choose growth over ego. It forced me to build skill instead of excuses. It forced me to become a student before becoming successful. And that identity shift has stayed with me far beyond sales. Every time I enter a new challenge now, I don't panic if I'm not immediately good. I observe. I take notes. I study patterns. I build process. And I trust consistency. The world glorifies instant wins. But real transformation often starts at the bottom of a leaderboard. So if you're there right now, don't run from it. Use it. Let it humble you. Let it teach you. Let it sharpen you. Because the distance between 23 out of 23 and top 6 isn't talent. It's awareness. It's patience. It's the courage to admit you don't know, yet. And that 90-day observation? It didn't just change my ranking. It changed how I approach everything. So today, instead of asking yourself why you're not winning yet, ask a better question. What are the winners doing that I'm not observing? Then be quiet long enough to find out. I promise you, that silence might be the loudest breakthrough of your life. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the lowest on the board, remember this: the bottom is not your identity. It's your training ground. And sometimes, being ranked last is exactly what you need to finally rise. I'll see you in the next one.